We have special guest Susanna Hoffs here.
I think on the last Bangles tour. It had been 9 years together.
In 1986, Prince secretly gave the Bangles their biggest hit. But that wasn't all he gave Susanna Hoffs. Behind the scenes, something was happening between them. The fairy tale romance led to chart success, but also jealousy within the band. Then came her marriage to a famous director in 1993. She'd had relationships with actors and musicians that Hollywood tried to hide. Each romance came with secrets and scandal. What really happened with Prince, and how did her love life accidentally tear apart one of the biggest bands of the 80s? Susanna Hoffs was born on January 17, 1959 in Los Angeles. Her family was unlike most. Her father, Joshua Allen Hoffs, was a respected psychoanalyst who worked with some of Hollywood's biggest names. Her mother, Tamar Ruth Simon, was one of the rare female directors in the film industry during the 1950s. Their home in Pacific Palisades cost $180,000 back then, which would be around $1.8 million today. It was filled with original artwork, movie memorabilia, and constant conversation. Susanna grew up with her brothers, John and Jesse, in a Jewish household where ideas flowed as easily as breakfast cereal. Her mother loved the Beatles. It wasn't just admiration. It was more like a lifestyle. In 1964, when I Want to Hold Your Hand took over American radio, their home basically turned into a Beatles shrine. Tamar owned every single and album, even the rare bootlegs, spending more than $2,000 a year, which equals about $18,000. Today, she played Abbey Road every morning while making breakfast and put on Sgt. Pepper's while cooking dinner. It wasn't just background music. It was everywhere. By the time Susanna turned 6, she could harmonize with any Beatles song. She didn't even realize she was learning the kinds of vocal layers that would later help define the Bangles. At age 7, Susanna began guitar lessons with her uncle, Robert Simon, a session guitarist who had worked with Sonny and Cher. In 1966, he gave her a small Martin acoustic guitar worth $85, which would cost about $750 today. Every Saturday, they practiced together in the family's garage, which had been turned into a little studio. Within 2 years, she had learned 47 chord progressions and had written her first song called Sunshine in My Room. Her uncle kept track of all her progress in a leather notebook that still exists today. By 9, she was already diving into advanced jazz chords. That early experience gave her the skills to one day stand out in a male-dominated rock world, not just as a singer, but as a guitarist who could handle rhythm and lead. Alongside music, dance played a big role in shaping how she carried herself on stage. From age 5 to 12, she trained at West Side Ballet Academy in Santa Monica. Her monthly classes cost $40, which is around $360 today. Her instructor, Madame Violet Armand, had once danced with the Paris Opera Ballet. Through ballet, Susanna learned how to hold her body with confidence, how to move with grace, and how to keep the audience's attention. She performed in 3 recitals, including a 1971 performance of The Nutcracker, where she played a snowflake. These years of training helped her develop the polished presence that would later set her apart from the more chaotic energy of other rock performers in the 1980s. In 1980, Susanna graduated from the University of California, Berkeley with a degree in art. But that final decision came after she had jumped between several majors. She explored dance, theater, film, and sculpture before settling on art. It wasn't because she couldn't make up her mind. It was because she had a deep curiosity about every creative form. During the day, she painted and sculpted. But at night, something else was taking shape. She had started writing music with her boyfriend, David Roach, and their band, first called the Psychiatrists and then the Unconscious, was becoming more than a side project. Her professors thought she'd go into galleries or museums, but she was already dreaming about playing music full-time. 2 concerts changed everything for her. The first was the Sex Pistols' final show at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco on January 14, 1978. It ended with Johnny Rotten famously asking the crowd if they felt cheated before walking off stage. The second was a performance by Patti Smith, who combined music and poetry in a way that hit Susanna deeply. She later said this was when she felt the full force of the punk and art movement. It was a turning point. She realized that with just 3 or 4 chords, she could create something raw and real. She remembered listening to the Ramones and thinking, I can do that. It gave her the courage to move from acoustic guitar to electric and see herself as part of something bigger. After graduating, Susanna shocked everyone by walking away from visual art completely. Her family had expected her to build a career in the arts, maybe working in film like her mother, but instead she moved back to Los Angeles and started looking for musicians to form a band. It was a risky move. In 1980, it wasn't easy for women to break into rock music. Most bands were made up of men, and there weren't many female guitarists on stage. But she didn't let that stop her. She relied on the guitar skills her uncle had taught her and the belief that she could create her own path. In 1981, Susanna Hoffs had just graduated from UC Berkeley with an art degree when she saw a small ad in an LA newspaper. It was placed by Vicki and Debbie Peterson, 2 sisters looking for musicians who loved the same bands. She did. When they met in a garage in Northridge, they started singing together and something clicked. That first harmony was all it took. They didn't have a plan, but they had chemistry, and just like that a band was born. They called themselves the Supersonic Bangs. Then the Bangs. Eventually, they became the Bangles. At the time, rock music was still a man's world. For women, trying to make it in a garage felt impossible. But they kept rehearsing. They kept playing clubs. They kept chasing it. In 1984, their first album came out. Critics loved it, but it didn't sell. It peaked at number 80 on the charts and sold just over 49,000 copies worldwide. They had praise, but no airplay. MTV ignored them. Radio stations didn't pick them up. That meant no money, and that meant day jobs. They were signed to Columbia Records, but it didn't feel like success. They were broke. They played small clubs at night and worked normal jobs during the day. Rent had to be paid. Groceries had to be bought, and the label started to worry. Some executives began wondering if they'd made a mistake signing an all-female rock band. That worry turned into pressure, and slowly the label started pushing Susanna Hoffs to the front. Not because she wanted to be the star, but because the industry thought a single face sold better than a group. Still, what made the Bangles different was the way they sang. Their harmonies weren't carefully designed. They discovered them by accident during one of their first garage sessions. Each member took turns singing lead, which gave their songs a layered, rich sound. Hoffs had a background in experimental music. The Peterson sisters brought folk and classic rock. Vicki Peterson's jangly guitar became part of their signature. Together they created something critics later called neo-psychedelia. But being different wasn't enough. In the 1980s, all-female bands were treated as gimmicks. Executives and magazines often sexualized them instead of respecting their talent. When the Go-Go were on the cover of Rolling Stone, they were shown in their underwear. The caption read, "GOS put out." That was the kind of environment the Bangles had to work in. Columbia Records began reshaping the band's image. Hoffs was pushed forward. The group's democratic style was slowly pushed aside. Then came a moment no one could have predicted. In 1984, Prince wrote a song called Manic Monday. He recorded it as a duet for another group, but decided not to release it. 2 years later, he quietly gave it to the Bangles. He used a fake name, Christopher, to hide his identity, but it wasn't random. He had heard their first album and was interested in Hoffs. He showed up at one of their gigs. Hoffs later said it felt like a fairy tale. Prince didn't bring glass slippers. He brought a hit song. That one song changed everything. Manic Monday was released in 1986 and reached number 2 in both the US and UK. It opened the door to their second album, Different Light. That album sold 3 million copies in the United States alone. It went platinum in Canada and the UK, too. 5 singles from the album made it onto the charts. For the first time, they were no longer struggling to be heard. They were everywhere. The biggest song from that album was Walk Like an Egyptian. It hit #1 in the US, Denmark, and the Netherlands. It stayed at the top of the Billboard chart for 4 weeks and became the #1 song of 1987. The video was nominated for Best Group Video at the MTV Awards. The Bangles were no longer just a garage band. They were global pop stars. By 1988, the music world had fully recognized their impact. That year, Rick and Backer released the Susanna Hoffs signature guitar. It was a limited edition with only 250 ever made. It was unveiled at a major music show in Atlanta. It cost over $1,000 and had a unique design personally chosen by Hoffs. The guitar became one of the most collectible instruments of the decade. It showed that her influence wasn't just about voice or image. It extended to how people played and understood rock music. Susanna Hoffs never set out to be the center of attention. The Bangles were meant to be a group where everyone shared the spotlight. Susanna, Vicki Peterson, Debbie Peterson, and Michael Steele all sang, wrote songs, and played instruments. In the beginning, that's how things work. But as soon as cameras showed up, everything started to shift. Susanna was shorter than the others, so photographers placed her in front. It seemed harmless at first, but over time, it made her look like the leader. The press noticed, fans noticed, and before long, the band's image had changed without anyone saying a word. Even though she never asked for it, Susanna became the face people remembered that slowly began to eat away at the bond they had built. The numbers told a painful story out of the 7 major singles released under Columbia Records. Susanna sang lead on 5, Manic Monday, Walk Like an Egyptian, Hazy Shade of Winter, In Your Room, and Eternal Flame all became huge hits. Her soft, unique voice worked well for radio. Producers and executives knew it and kept choosing her. The Walk Like an Egyptian video made her even more recognizable, especially because of her famous eye movement. Audiences connected with her instantly. By 1988, some radio DJs were calling the songs hers alone. Fans thought of her as the singer, not realizing how much the others had given to the music. This wasn't something Susanna had planned, but with each hit, the gap between her and the rest of the band kept growing. It wasn't just the songs. Magazine covers began featuring only Susanna. Rolling Stone, Spin, and teen outlets all pushed her as the main attraction. Her bandmates, if they appeared at all, were pushed to the corners or left out completely. Reporters stopped asking about the group and focused only on Susanna's private life. Press tours and TV appearances followed the same pattern. Cameramen zoomed in on her face, and interviews were directed only at her. Even when she tried to mention the rest of the band, the media ignored it. Her effort to include them only made her seem more charming, which made things worse. The rest of the Bangles were stuck watching their equal partner become something else in the eyes of the world. By 1988, things were falling apart behind the scenes. What had once been a strong, equal group now felt like a divided workplace. During concerts, Vicki often spoke to the crowd and helped lead the shows, but the cameras stayed on Susanna. The other members felt invisible. Debbie later admitted she just got used to the tension. No one knew how to tell Kay about what was happening. Susanna later said they had no way to sit down and talk things out as a group. The damage kept building until record executives began suggesting she go solo. They didn't seem to care about the others. That was the final push that broke what little was left. In 1989, the band split. On the outside, it looked like success. Inside, it had quietly collapsed. Then came the movie. On May 1, 1987, the all-nighter hit theaters. It was a beach-themed comedy written and directed by Susanna's mother, Tamar Simon Hoffs. Susanna starred alongside Joan Cusack, Dee Pfeiffer, and Pam Grier. The budget was small, around $1 million. The movie didn't do well, making just $2.7 million worldwide, but the damage had already been done. The rest of the band hadn't been involved at all. While they were left behind, Susanna was being presented as a solo artist and actress. The film didn't even use Bangles music, but that didn't matter. Her image as a solo star had already taken hold. Magazines and talk shows gave her more attention. Fans and insiders saw her as separate from the group. Whether she wanted it or not, Susanna had become something much bigger than the Bangles. On October 30, 1986, the Bangles played at the Avalon in Hollywood. Backstage, Susanna Hoffs met songwriter Tom Kelly. That meeting led to a new way of writing for her. She had always started with melodies, but Kelly and his partner Billy Steinberg started with lyrics instead. They wrote Eternal Flame using two real-life images. One was the flame at Elvis Presley's grave in Graceland, which had gone out during a rainy tour. The other was a red light in Steinberg's childhood synagogue in Palm Springs. That light was never supposed to go out. The song was released on January 23, 1989, and became the Bangles' second #1 hit. It went gold in top charts in 8 other countries. Only the Supremes and the Cheryl's had achieved multiple #1 hits as all-female bands before them. Just before that, another track called In Your Room had proven Susanna's range. Released but just as they reached their peak, everything fell apart. In 1989, the band was called to their manager's house. They thought they were discussing a tour in Australia. Instead, they walked into a room filled with their lawyer, their publicist, and their managers. The message was simple. It was over. Vicki Peterson later admitted she had seen the signs but chose to ignore them. Many believe the split was pushed by management who saw Hoffs as a future solo star. They even offered Michael Steele a solo deal to stop the band from continuing without Hoffs. By then, the group was already exhausted. They had been on the road for years. Tensions had been rising since the Different Light album. They wanted to be seen as real musicians, but their biggest hits were often written by others. Public perception painted Hoffs as the leader, and that only deepened the cracks between them. The timing couldn't have been worse. The band broke up in autumn of 1989, just 6 months after Eternal Flame had top charts worldwide. Hoffs' solo career didn't take off the way everyone expected. Michael Steele's solo deal never happened. The Peterson sisters were so shaken, they left music completely, at least for a while. Vicki joined the Continental Drifters and Debbie started a band called Kindred Spirit. Fans and industry insiders, the breakup made no sense. In 1991, Hoffs released her first solo album, When You're a Boy. She recorded at big-name studios in Hollywood, and David Kahn produced it. Her lead single, My Side of the Bed, reached number 30 on the Billboard charts. But the album itself peaked at just number 83 in the US and 56 in the UK. She ended the record with a David Bowie cover, Boys Keep Swinging. The title of the album came from that track. Critics were not kind. One called it a dud. Another said it was airbrushed boredom. Columbia Records released 3 singles from it, but none made a real impact. By 1996, Hoffs had shifted her musical style. Her second album was self-titled and more folk-driven. Colia didn't like the change and dropped her. London Records picked it up instead. The single, All I Want, reached number 77 and stayed on the chart for 12 weeks, but it wasn't enough to save the project. The album was personal, filled with darker themes. One song, Weak with Love, was written about John Lennon's assassination. Critics praised it, but it sold poorly. Some songs had already been rejected by Columbia, showing how little faith the label had in her direction. At the same time, something unexpected happened. Hoffs became part of a fake 1960s band called Ming T. It included Mike Myers and Matthew. Myers played Austin Powers, Sweet played Sid Belvedere, and Hoffs became Gillian Shagwell. What began as a joke in LA nightclubs turned into full performances in all 3 Austin Powers films. They recorded songs like BBC and Daddy Wasn't There. The group's name came from a strange 1960s Italian film with Ursula Andress. The timing worked. Hoffs' solo career had stalled, and Myers was building the Austin Powers character. Ironically, this silly fictional band ended up more popular than her serious albums. In 1993, Hoffs married Jay Roach, the man who would direct the Austin Powers films. The ceremony happened in Los Angeles. Her uncle and grandfather, both rabbis, officiated. Her grandfather told her, "You, my princess, have now brought me a prince." Roach, who was raised Southern Baptist, converted to Judaism before the wedding. They had 2 sons, one in 1995 and another in 1998. Roach later directed Meet the Parents in serious political films like Recount and Game Change. In 2023, Hoffs said it took many past relationships, including ones with Prince and actor Donovan Leitch, to realize Jay was the right one. Her greatest musical success after the Bangles came through partnership. In 2006, she and Matthew Sweet released Under the Covers Volume 1. They used the names Sid and Susie and recorded 15 songs from the 1960s. They shared a love of classic songwriting. Volume 2 came out in 2009 with 16 songs from the 1970s, including tracks by Carly Simon, Rod Stewart, and Fleetwood Mac. Volume 3, released in 2013, focused on 1980s artists like The Pretenders and The Smiths. Across the 3 albums, they covered 57 artists from the Beatles to Prince. A 4-CD box set later came out called Completely Under the Covers. It included bonus songs and became her most praised work since the Bangles. In 1999, the Bangles did something no one expected. After 10 years of not speaking to each other, they got back together. But it wasn't for love or nostalgia. VH1 offered them $2 million to reunite for a Behind the Music special. Susanna Hoffs had been making only $50,000 a year from her solo work. That money changed everything. They met on March 15, 1999 at Sound City Studios in Venice. For the first 3 hours, they didn't say a single word to each other. They only spoke through their manager. Each one stayed in a separate recording booth. The tension was real. Then they started playing Manic Monday. That moment broke the silence. Hoffs began crying. Something shifted. The show pulled in 4.2 million viewers and became VH1's highest-rated episode that year. Their reunion led to a new album. It was called Doll Revolution and came out on March 15, 2003. It cost them $500,000 to make. They borrowed the money against future royalties. Things looked bad at first. Only 12,000 copies sold in the first week. Critics said the album felt old and forced, but then something strange happened. One song, Something That You Said, slowly caught on with adult contemporary radio. It reached number 27 on the charts. That one song saved them from financial disaster. Hoffs admitted in 2004 that she had been looking for a real job before the checks finally started coming in. The album eventually sold 180,000 copies worldwide. It didn't make them stars again, but it proved they still had something to offer. The track fans loved the most. Ask Me No Questions had actually been written during their original breakup in 1989, but was never recorded until then. Their next album came from a very different place. In 2011, they recorded Sweetheart of the Sun in Susanna Hoffs' kitchen. They couldn't afford proper studio time, so they set up microphones and recording gear right in her Beverly Hills home. Everything had to be done between 9 a.m. and 3:00 p.m. while her kids were at school. Producer Matthew said they even used kitchen pots as sound panel. On November 3, 2010, at exactly 2:47 a.m., after some wine and late-night jamming, they recorded the title track. That raw moment turned into their most praised song in 2 decades. The album sold 45,000 copies in its first month. That was 3 times more than what their label expected, and it only cost $18,000 to make. They used GarageBand on Hoffs' MacBook Pro. Later, the whole recording process became a documentary called Sweetheart Sessions. Outside of music, Susanna Hoffs focused on raising her 2 sons. Jackson was born in 1994 and Sam in 1997. She spent over $3 million on their education. Both boys went to Stanford. Jackson didn't get in right away. He was rejected twice before transferring in 2014. Just his tuition cost $47,000 a year. Hoffs sold her Malibu beach house for $2.1 million to help pay for it. Sam got in with a full academic scholarship to study computer science. Jackson now works in Nashville as a music producer and earns $35,000 a year. Sam took a different path. He became a tech entrepreneur, and by age 25, he was worth $2.8 million. Hoffs once said she used to practice guitar in her car during their Little League games so she wouldn't miss those moments. Both sons know how to play instruments, but only one went into music. Sam once joked that his mother cured him of wanting to be a musician. One of Hoffs' biggest turning points came from an unexpected place. In July 2011, she was driving to a Bangles rehearsal when she accidentally rear-ended a man named Andrew Brassel at an intersection in Beverly Hills. Instead of just exchanging insurance details, they started talking about music. Brassel was a Nashville songwriter. He played a demo for her right there on his phone. 3 months later, she flew to Nashville to work with him. That accident turned into a full solo album called Someday. It only cost $75,000 to make, but took 18 months to finish. Hoffs would only record during school hours. Producer Mitchell Froom agreed to work for $500 a day because he believed in the songs. When the album finally came out, it got the best reviews of her whole career. Rolling Stone called it her masterpiece. It didn't sell much, just 23,000 copies, but it made $400,000 in licensing deals for TV and film. At 64, Susanna Hoffs surprised everyone again.